and welcome back to episode 5 of the Hooked On NRL SuperCoach podcast. I'm your host, Xavier, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jacob. How are we, Jacob?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Xavier. It's good. Footy's finally back, and I have
Yeah.
to actually say I'm a big fan of the Sunday 10 a.m. kickoff, our time anyway. It was good to get amongst the footy early doors. Didn't have to wait to the 4 p.m. dreaded time. Just woke up Sunday and it was there. And I think both Vegas games really were good. Good watch, good entertainment. How about you? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, apart from the Warriors getting absolutely smashed, geez, we look dreadful. But yeah, it was good, so good to have footy back, and I really enjoy. I think Sunday's my favorite day for footy as well. So it was good to just kick back and enjoy the footy again. And yeah, they're both really good games, and yeah, looking forward to talking some more Supercoach with you. Would you like to take us through the first segment?
Yeah, that's it, mate. Exactly that. And massive shout out to all you guys liking, commenting, subscribing, and also joining the league. We've almost hit 50 subscribers on YouTube and we've got 70 in the league. Now, last time we recorded, I believe there was like 30, 40 in the league. Well, we've now got 70. Like, we're just so stoked with everyone joining, getting amongst it, getting around it. That's what we love to see. We're here to provide a bit of super coach analysis, a bit of content, and also have a laugh along the way. So yeah, I think it's really good, awesome that all you guys are getting involved with it all. Keep it up. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ding the bell. And yeah, don't forget you can join this league and we're cutting it off at round 10. So you've got 10 more rounds to join before it's the cut off. And then the winner will be, of course, joining us for a podcast as a special guest appearance sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's just absolutely great way to start the
Yeah.
podcast with such positive feedback, such good engagement so far. So yeah, what about you there, Xavier?
Yeah, I'm absolutely stoked, mate. Same as you. Thank you to everyone that's been following us and has liked, comment, subscribed on our videos and joined our leagues. We really do appreciate it, and it's just been phenomenal. Jacob and I we really just enjoy talking footy and Supercoach, and it's good to have the feedback and people getting amongst it. So yeah, if you're not in the league already, definitely join up. Jacob's got the code up there for everyone, and yeah, look forward to seeing how everyone goes throughout the season.
Yeah, exactly that. And then just a quick shout out in case you are listening and not watching, the league code is 849156. That's 849156. But enough of the admin sort of stuff. I reckon we get stuck into today's app. So what are we talking about today, Zave?
Yeah, we're firstly we'll touch on the weekend. Quick little recap of the two games that were over the weekend, and then we'll go into our like buy, hold, sells from the weekend. Just quick initial thoughts of what happened, what went well, what didn't. Then we'll go into our team list for the week upcoming. Touch on similar sort of thing, players of interest, and then we'll give you guys an updated team reveal today. So looking forward to the episode, mate.
Yeah, that should be good. Let's get stuck into it.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess we'll kick it off with that first game with the Raiders and the Warriors, mate. So in that one, obviously it didn't go the Warriors' way, but Supercoach takeaways. I think the key one that everyone's sort of talking about is Luke Metcalf, and how he only got 12 points there. He was in my side, he was in your side as well. He was a very popular purchase. Um, Look, I mean, initial thoughts are, yeah, that's really not great. It's the first round, so at least if that happened in the second round, it wasn't going to carry over as part of the 3 round average, and she's just going to affect one price drop essentially. But the thoughts are Warriors did not look good at all. He did not look good at all. He had a bit of a shocker. So he's definitely on the cutting block after that game. After just one game, it's crazy that I was so set on him throughout all preseason, and that just shows you how quickly Supercoach moves, I guess. I'm already having a look. I'll give him another round, I think. But if he doesn't perform again, then he's definitely someone I'll be looking at trading out. What are your thoughts on Metcalf?
Yeah, very similar. Very disappointed in him. Like, we obviously hyped him up a little bit in the preseason. We thought he looked the goods, which he did. But to be fair, that was a trial game. But yeah, Raiders really just blew him off the park. And look, like, I don't think the Warriors had the right game plan. Like, their forwards got run off the park in the first 25 minutes. And the Warriors were pretty much chasing the game ever since that. So I think next week we do get a week break. So the Warriors aren't playing this week. So they get the week off. They get a whole regroup, reset. hopefully maybe forget that game and then come out and prove a point at home next week. So yeah, I wouldn't be selling him just right now, but he is a massive watch because yeah, big letdown. As you mentioned there, his price, this 12 score will drop out the first week of price rises, so it won't affect it too much. But it definitely didn't pass the eye test, so to speak, in the game. But I think there, the main thing is now kind of being adaptive. And as we'll get into later, just because, as you can see, I also had KO weeks here. So I might be in a bit of curry in 5-8 early doors. So I'm going to bring in one of these dual guys so that I can easily switch around and then get in and rectify the issue there. So I think that will be kind of a thinking point now moving forward because we have had that week break between the games. But yeah, look, didn't pass the eye test, but give him another week. I won't be playing him next week. I'll sit him outside of my 18. I would just give him another week though. Like obviously he hasn't performed. Keep him in your side one more week. You don't have to play him. We should have enough other reserves. And then yeah, if he flops again next week, yeah, he's gone. He's gone for me.
Yeah. Look, mate, he's actually on my cutting. Yeah, as I mentioned before, he's definitely on the chopping block for me to be trading him out as early as, lockout end. But that's just because I really don't have faith in the Warriors, unfortunately. This year I saw how they played. They need to do something. They were playing against a team with a man down in Tarpany who got Simbin, and we threw nothing at the Raiders. And that's due to our halves. That Metcalf being one of them. And I really think we're missing Tomato Martin in the halves. Bit of footy talk, but we're missing his creativity. Chanel Harris-Tavita, as I said, it's a bit more of a defensive half, but we offered nothing in attack. So for me, I could see myself trading him out as early as lockout. Just see how we go though. Yeah, I guess that was the main takeaway from that game. Other little things to touch on. Horsburgh looked unreal. He looked phenomenal. He's a highly owned player. And then I guess the other one was Savalio Tamale, who I know that you weren't very keen on in the preseason. I had him in my side, but just the job security issues sort of wavered me off him. And now, he looked the goods. He had a good game. So he scored 73 without a try, I believe. So that's very, very good. But, how many games are the Raiders going to play the Warriors or put 30 points on? That's another thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, exactly that. And he is definitely someone I got wrong there. Like, I always thought he was a bit of a tackle buster, so to speak. But for him to put out that performance, obviously Ricky is going to play him again next week because Savage has been charged and suspended. So we don't know with the job security. So I wouldn't be buying next week. I'd be waiting for that round 3 when Savage is back, when Hopewada is back to get a real test as is he in Ricky's best sort of 17. And if he is, I would absolutely snap him up. He could be one of the best center wing cheapies this year if he holds that spot. His base is incredible. He's got that tackle busting ability. And the Raiders in general just look to offload. And I think that will bode well for all their backs with the tired forwards. They will just run amok, especially with the amount of pace the Raiders have there. So yeah, I think as you mentioned, their horse, absolutely great. Looked heaps involved. Absolute must have. If you don't have him, I would absolutely get him in next week. Like he is someone I can confidently say he's going to be like a must sort of thing this year because at that price in the front row forward position, you can just lock him in for the year. I feel like he performed everything we wanted to see. He passed all the boxes, all green ticks for him. So yeah, really big on horse there. And then yes, Tamale could be coming into the side, not just next week, but if he holds the spot the week after, I'll definitely be keen on him there.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Yeah, I do have a bit more faith in Tamale's job security, but you're right in saying that it's definitely safer to wait till round 3. I just think with Hopoate trialing in the centres and potentially they're not looking at him there, and also he played phenomenally. So I think it's more likely than unlikely that he keeps a spot now. And I guess the last person to touch on, which I forgot about also, was Valmanga, the cheapie from the Warriors. As you could see, we got glimpses of exactly what the hype was about. He has awesome PPM. The issue being he didn't get any minutes. Like I was shocked at how little minutes he got. So it's not an issue, not an instant trade out or anything like that. I think his time will come throughout the year. He's just got to bide his time a little bit, and surely his minutes go up. They were so low, but he looked the goods to me on the eye.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know what Webster was doing with his rotation because he took off Fisher Harris and Barnett both pretty early on in the game. And they're not just good Supercoach players. Like these guys are good rugby league players. And I think that's because, especially with the platform the Raiders laid early on, like that is just where the Raiders killed him straight through the middle. The forwards offered nothing. So I think that could bide well for his time moving forward, as in game time, that is. I think he should see an increase. But yeah, look, he's a PPM beast. It was just that game time that is an issue. But moving forward a couple of weeks, if he maintains this sub sort of 20-minute role, I will be looking to move him on. And we've got a few cheapies this week in the second row forward that I can happily watch a couple of weeks. And then if we see one of these cheapies that are really doing well, I'm like, all right, I think that will be a good use of a trade there. But yeah, Vamonga for me, we can chill. I'm a lot more worried about Metcalf.
Mm.
And I think the only other thing I'd like to touch on for the Warriors is, as you mentioned, they just looked really bad. And in attack, the only positive was they were hammering the left edge. And I think Roger is going to be in for a great season. So he scored 73 with just one try. He had one disallowed. And Capo also scored where Roger should have been on his wing, but he took the set before and he went straight through the middle there. So yeah, look, I think if you started with Roger, you're stoked. I think he's going to average around 65, 70. If the Warriors can start clicking, they can start looking good in attack. I think he will be one of the better buys. So yeah, if you started with him, you're stoked. But yeah, as you mentioned there, I think with the halves pairing, it didn't really work out. I don't know if Webster will persist with it or if he will bring Tamari back in, sort of thing. I think they do look better with Tamari sort of running the team and then Metcalf playing that like second receiver rather than first receiver. But obviously we're not Webster, so that will kind of unfold for itself. And then just the last thing for me to touch on with the Raiders side would be KO Weeks. So I went for a bit of the rush got to me. The game was about to kick off. I was so keen that footy was back, and I kind of just, as we mentioned in the 5'8" podcast, like I didn't mind KO Weeks being a fullback out of position, getting him at 5'8". And the concern with him was just that base, and we've kind of seen it game one. So 33, this is all in base. Like you got absolutely no attacking stats. Couldn't buy an attacking stat on the weekend. But I'm going to hold, and I'm a lot more confident in KO Weeks than Metcalf because the Raiders looked good with that offloading game. There's going to be so much free space for the backs moving forward, and especially not playing on Vegas in a restricted sort of field, just playing on a normal field moving forward. I think his time will come. So yeah, I'm more than happy to, if you started with KO Weeks, to happily sit him for a couple more weeks. But yes, I feel like next week, after both Metcalf and KO Weeks play, I feel like one of them will be on the chopping block, and it's kind of depends on who performs best next week. But yeah, for me, KO Weeks, happy enough that I started with him. Obviously, didn't perform to standards on the weekend. Xavier Savage kind of took his glory a bit. But yeah, look, I think he looked good. He's quick, he's electric. He just needs to, the Raiders just need to start utilizing him a little bit more.
Yeah, that's fair enough, mate. I definitely agree with those points. KO Weeks wasn't a bad buy at all. In that 5'8" position, playing out of position as a fullback, I didn't mind it. Yeah, it's just a low base as you touched on. One player that I did have as well before we move on to the next game was Zach Hosking. I'd just like to touch on him quickly. First thing, I cannot believe he got the try assist and his line break assist taken off him for the try to Tomoko. That just blows my mind. Like surely that gets given back. He created the space, passed it down to the center and to Tomoko, and he got 0 points for that. He still ended on 57, which I'm very happy with. 57 in base. He made 41 tackles. He didn't play the full 80, which is a little bit. I wasn't expecting it, but I was definitely hoping for that. But he's definitely someone that I'm happy to plug in there at his price tag at just over 500k. He's just got a super coach friendly game. Hopefully, we see him push into 80 minutes, and that potentially might have just been a precaution because I was so far ahead. But that's wishful thinking, I think. But yeah, I don't understand the try assist. Maybe that's just me having the goggles on, but it seems like fair few other people have the same opinion, like as me. What do you think? Do you think try assist, line break assist, or?
Yeah, well, watching it live initially, yes, that is what I thought. But we've seen sort of Supercoach in recent years with the consistency of it is whoever creates that overlap. And the center, I feel, who ended up getting it, Seb Chris, was it?
Oh, I don't know. I think it might have been the pass before Hosking, but Hosking drew in the defenders and passed it out. I don't know. I feel a bit hard done by that as a Hosking owner, but you just got to cop those ones on the chin, because that like yeah, you're not going to get it your way all the time, I guess. The one thing with Supercoach scoring is if they're sweeping behind that's their try assist if they're running behind a block shape, but that was just hands to the line. Hosking drew the man, created, and I feel like created the overlap there. So um,
Bit of
yeah.
justice for Hosking owners he's asking for. As a non-Hosking owner, it's pretty funny to watch this all unveil already, round one, because I'm sure this will happen so many times throughout the season. A bit of controversy with the scoring. But yes, obviously not much you can do. But yeah, I think he's a great pod. Just over 500k, 57 pretty much in base. I think not playing 80 is a little bit worrying, but it's only round one, so I'm sure his minutes will probably go up rather than down. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers it for the Raiders Wars game. Anyone else you wanted to touch on
No,
there?
no, that's it, mate. We'll move on to the Sharkies Panthers.
Yeah, so into the Sharkies Panthers. This was a cracking game. I thought this really epitomized rugby league. Obviously, the women played beforehand and absolutely flogged England. So I feel like this was a way better spectacle for the US especially to watch. And it was just a classic, right? Panthers
100%.
Sharks. And to be fair, I think the Sharks earned their 22 points. Like that
Hmm.
they were a good team. Like they did play pretty well. The Panthers are just a bit too classy and too good, but I think the Sharks should be on for a good season. Nico, I didn't think played his best game. He looked pretty good early on, but he kind of faded into the game and didn't really make much of an impact. But the bloke who did is Baden Trindle, and I thought he was outstanding. I think he has now kind of been given the keys to that team, and yeah, he kind of had everything on an absolute tee. Like he was a really good watch, and I think he could become a sort of super coach option moving forward. I know I had him last year, and I know a lot of people are scared and haunted of him from the past, but I think it's just a massive watch, right? It just depends if Hines gets the kicking tee back or not. So I feel like the first sort of person we'll talk on, we'll go to the Sharks first, is Hines. We obviously paid up for him. We were both keen on the gun sort of halfback strategy. And look, 50 points. He didn't kick, which was one of the standout points, and he got an early try assist. So as I said, he looked good early doors. But yeah, just without the kicking tee does make it a bit interesting. So I'm not going to rush and sell him straight away. It will be a bit of a watch and wait, especially if we hear anything out of the Sharks saying that he's still because apparently he's still recovering from a bit of a niggle, which is why Trindle kicked. But if it is true that kind of Trindle, or if we get it confirmed that Trindle will be kicking this season, Hines then becomes a bit of a sell option, especially if Dufty performs well. But I think for now I'm happy to hold. What are your thoughts on Nico?
Yeah, mate. Nico, I think I still stand by. He was a great buy. I ended up putting him in my side. I know he wasn't in my side in the latest team reveal, but looking at his draw, he just had to get through the Panthers game, and I was really happy with the upcoming games and also what he produces in that position. Obviously, not having the kicking was a bit of a slap in the face, but I'm actually quietly confident that he gets it back. I think maybe big stage, everyone was talking about Nico versus Cleary. He's got a bit of a niggle. He would have been happy to just hand it over. There's enough people talking about Nico in big games, so and I'm hoping that that's the case. Obviously, if he doesn't kick again next week, then it's potentially a reassess, but that also depends on what other options appear. Overall, though, on his actual gameplay, I was quite happy with how he looked on the eye. He seemed quite involved. Same old Nico making tackles. You're right in saying that Trindle did look creative, but surely I just think if the Sharks win games, it's off the back of Nico. He's their main guy. It's not Trindle. Like it's got to be off Nico. Nico's their star player. And he needs to step up and do more if they are to win. So I think that will come, and I'm hoping that comes, but obviously reassess next week. But I'm not unhappy with the purchase by any means.
Yeah, and as you mentioned there, Hines is that marquee guy for the Sharks. But after that game, I think the Sharks would definitely be saying Trindle was. Like he really did run that ship, and I was quite impressed. But as we kind of mentioned, they scored 22 points against the four-time reigning premiers, the Panthers, who are one of the best defensive team in the comp. I reckon if they play like that against any other team, like your Warriors, so to say, I reckon they're running up a big score, and Nico's probably definitely turning up. Like
Yeah.
I have faith in the Sharks this year. They that first game really impressed me, as did Adam Fanua-Blake. I just want to quickly touch on him. If you paid
Yeah.
up at front row forward, I think you were in for a season. He looked like a man on a mission. As per, he does get these attacking stats because he's so hard to handle close to the line. Like he ran over Yo and Edwards, like one of the couple best NRL players in this day and age. He did that with ease, sort of thing. So I think he's in for a big season. If you started with him, hats off. A great pick. You've done well there, but we've just kind of opted in a bit more value at front row forward. Anyone else we want to touch on from the Sharks? I feel like
Nah, that's pretty much it, mate. Like I think Adam Fanua-Blake and Hines were the main two. I feel like Fanua-Blake, yeah, as Jacob said, hats off if you started with him. He it's just a wrecking ball, you know. The reason we didn't start with him, as Jacob touched on, was just other value in that position. But you know, can't fault the pick at all, and it just looks like he's the same old Adam Fanua-Blake scoring tries and causing chaos in the middle.
exactly that, mate. So moving on now to the Panthers, a few more relevant Supercoach players here. We'll quickly touch on Yowie first. 90 points straight off the bat to start the season. How good's that? Look, if you
Mm.
paid up in the second row forward, as we kind of both mentioned in the previous sort of podcast, like we like Yo. You know what you're going to get. And if he scores, he's going to produce these scores. Like, I don't think he will be scoring every week, obviously not, but I think you can lock him in pretty much every week for 65, 70. We just, with the values of our team, we couldn't get him in. We couldn't afford to pay up in second row forward, especially at his price at 720K. He is expensive, but I think he's just proved like you could just lock him in, bank his points. You wouldn't need to sell him the whole season. You can just lock in pretty much 65, 70 points consistently every week, and then he always has that attacking upside, especially now with no Lawai. I think like Yo will play a bit more ball playing. So yeah, any thoughts on Yo quickly?
Yeah, but nothing other than what you said. Like good purchase. As in, like he's not a value pick, but he's definitely someone that you pick and stick for the season. I remember messaging you in our chat and saying that the way that Vegas goes with a narrow field, it's just a type of game that suits the middle forwards. And we really saw that with Yo, and I messaged about McInnes as well. I just thought those were the two guys that are just going to eat up a game like this. And you know, can't fault the buy with Yo at all. I think he's a awesome player. Not value, but he's someone that you can just pick and stick with for the season. Definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm just having a bit of difficulty, so we'll continue moving on, going through the Panthers squad. We're back now. No one really to touch on. Dane Laurie obviously proved his point off the bench, got in early doors. Bit of a horror start if he had both Casey McLean and um the Warriors half.
And
Like,
Metcalf, yeah,
yeah, and
geez,
like
mate, that's
that is horror. That is absolute start again next season sort of stuff. Obviously, it's a long season, you'll be right, but like that's just not how you'd want to kick off Vegas and kick off NRL for the year. But I think it's true. If you got McLean, I would hold. Like Laurie showed that edge. That should have been McLean's sort of scores. They will be going to that left edge, and that Panthers will be scoring tries. So I thought he did really good coming on early doors. Dylan Edwards, obviously heavily involved as we kind of expected, as we touched on in the preseason. Just no value there at like 850K. But if Nathan Cleary goes down, I think he comes straight into contention, like especially with the goal kicking, with his base, with all the attack he gets. And I think it kind of happened on the weekend. Cleary kind of missed out on a couple try assists to Dylan Edwards because Dylan Edwards was sort of that sweeping play. So yeah, I think if you started with Dylan Edwards, you'd be happy with that. Same as Lindsay Smith. Now Lindsay Smith looked unreal. Like he really passed my eye test big time. And I think it's such a shame in front row forward this year because most of us have already locked in Horse and May. But I think maybe the play could be bringing Horse down to second row and putting Lindsay in at 520K And just a bee's dick away of scoring on the weekend. If he scored that's a ton. And he just looked so involved. As I mentioned in the preseason, I think he's going to take a massive role this year at the Panthers, especially with Fish leaving. And yeah, look, he passed every eye test. So he's someone I am keen on, and I'm kind of looking at big time into seeing how and if I can trade him in, sort of thing. Any thoughts there on any of those blokes?
Yeah, mate. Lindsay Smith, start off. He's my boy. I bought him in. I had him last year actually as a bit of a pod. I bought him in the week that he scored against Melbourne. I really like his game. He's phenomenal. He just goes all day. Penrith just seem to breed these forwards that have such good fitness and they're just absolute workhorses in the middle. They have such good line speed. They're very disciplined. And he's just one of those, he just goes about his work, but far out, he did not go unnoticed on the weekend. He's a machine. I really like him as a player. In Supercoach, the downside is to him, it's just he he doesn't really offer, like I know he almost scored a try, but he doesn't offer much in the way of offloads. And then he's not really going to score a try. He might get like three throughout the season, but he's safe as houses. It's just whether you want to go with that. I try to go for more of upside guys, but definitely can't fault him as a buy and as a super coach option just because he's just a machine and he all he needs is the minutes, which we touched on in the preseason that we're thinking. Well, we know that he's going to have a bigger role this year with Fisher Harris leaving. He stepped into the starting role, and he had Australian honours last year, so. Um, Love him as a player. As far as the other guys, Cleary was just Cleary. That silky kick he put through was just so good to watch. Um, you're right in saying that try assist. It felt like he could have scored more than what what we see there on the screen, based on his game. But he's coming back from a shoulder injury as well, and he's just absolute class. I think he's only going to get better, and I would not want to watch a Panthers game without Cleary. Edwards, same thing. Like he looked great as well. We've already touched on Yeo. Casey McLean, I feel terrible for those owners. That's just really hard luck, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. With he was knocked out within the first 3 minutes, and I really did think he was a pretty good option or a decent option, especially on the wing. And Dane Laurie got 88 points out there, and I would hold, given that he provided that he plays next game. I think it's 11-day stand down, and it's 12 days till the next game, so he should be okay. But they might just opt to take the precautionary route and sit him for his brother. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is from me, mate. On the Penrith side of things.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly touch on Cleary as well. I think he's just that guy. Like, this is his first game back, all his offseason, and he just looked unreal. Like, if you were going with one or Cleary or Hines, I hope you went Cleary, because for Cleary to score 68, not doing too much, too heavily involved, bit of rust first game of the season, I thought he was just absolutely unreal. And as you mentioned, like, if you're watching a Panthers game moving forward, you can't watch it not having Cleary, because he's just
No.
in everything. He runs that side around the field. He's so good. He's just a must in Supercoach, and will be coming massively into captaincy considerations moving forward. Obviously, this week I had the vice captain on him. I'm not going to loop that. We'll get into my captaincy picks kind of later on. I've gone, as if you watched the last week's poddy, I mentioned it as a bit of a pod play, and I've kind of really grown into that pod play, starting with him as captain, who we'll get into later. But yeah, I think that kind of wraps up our first two Vegas games. Like, as we kind of mentioned here, don't jump to trading and rage trading these blokes straight away. I'd give him a week. We do have that grace period of no price rises until round 3. So yeah, just give it a week. But yeah, if people like Metcalf didn't pass the eye test, they do the same again next week. They are straight off the chopping block. But yeah, I think that wraps up our first sort of 2 games from Vegas.
Yeah, that's it,
So
mate. And
moving
I
on
just want
now.
to I just want
Oh
to
yeah.
extend on what you said there about give him a week. I definitely agree with that, but I also think that in round 2, you could see some more. You're going to see more games and have more, I guess, sort of data to go off on decisions, and you might have more trade outs that you want to do. Say, so it's, I can get around doing trades after this round for sure, and just getting in early and then trading again in round 2 because you only get maximum 3 trades with a boost. And if you've got more than 3 players to trade out, and you already don't like the look of someone, then I think it's best to move off them. Like as I said, Metcalf for me is one of those guys that depending on how the rest of my side goes, I'm just not keen on him anymore. I don't think anything next week um, can change that very much. Like there is definitely a way to hold. But yeah, I'm definitely all for, getting ahead of the pack and making those moves early in the season if you don't like the look of someone.
Yeah, you make a good point there, and just for me personally on that, it's just if you go and sell Metcalf say next week, and me for one, I'm not going to be playing him next week, but I'm going to be holding him. But if he then puts out a 60 sort of 70 sort of point performance, like that's exactly what we've brought him for, and like
Yeah,
we've brought everyone into our Supercoach teams for a reason. You got to have a bit more faith than just one game. But yeah, look, early signs not promising at all, but I think just give it a watch next week, see how he goes. If he does. But yeah, like as you mentioned, you could be stuck in you want to trade all these sort of guys out at once. So then I suppose it's managing who to trade, who you can hold, sort of thing. But yes, obviously we get the boost in Supercoach, and I think we're both pretty good advocates of using the boosts, not all the boosts, but using a lot of your boosts sort of early doors, get your team right, get the cash gen right, and so on, setting yourself up. So
yeah,
yeah, I think that covers sort of the initial start to point round 0.5 of Supercoach.
that's it, mate. Yeah, we'll tuck into those team lists now. Sorry for holding you up there.
Yeah, all good. All right. So moving on to the first game of the week this week, not of the round, obviously, of the week this week, we have the Roosters Broncos. And so we're just going to touch on sort of any talking points or any sort of surprises that we found here. So starting off with the Roosters, it's good to see Toya locking in that center spot. As we all kind of predicted, that was the plan. And yeah, it's good to see him start there. So definitely start with him. I reckon he's probably going to be the number he's going to be up there for cheapies of the year this year. I think he's got a bit of talent to him, but obviously the Roosters side looks a bit, well, especially matched up here against the Broncos. It does look weak. So I don't really know how well he's going to score. I'm not playing him this week. I'm just putting him on my bench. But yeah, I think he's going to be a good pick this year with this bench, right? We got Docker Clay, Wong, Steep, and Fotoaka. It's just not it's not the bench you want to see for Connor Watson, and I've kind of gone cold on Connor Watson. Obviously, in the preseason, I was massive on him, but with Docker Clay being in the 14 jersey, I just don't know Connor Watson's role, and I think Connor Watson 80 minutes is what we wanted, and I just don't think it's what we're going to get.
Yeah,
So as we'll get into later, he's kind of moved on out of my team just because with that bench, I just don't see him playing 80 minutes. I see Docker Clay coming on. I see Watson probably jumping into the 13 role, which would be handy, but I just don't see him playing those big minutes. So I've gone cold on Watson, and then one of the last boys I'll touch on from the Roosters that I've gone warm on it again is Nafu White. Look, I think as we kind of mentioned, as I just touched on just then, with that bench set up, I think Nafu White's in for great minutes, especially for the first couple of rounds while Spencer Leniu was out. I think this is a big chance for him to kind of earn the spot in Robbo's team. I'm not saying he's going to knock Spencer Leniu down the pecking order, but I think this will be a really good indication and a really good test for him. And I have faith in him. I think he's a good footy player. I think he gets through his work. He'll go at about a point a minute. I reckon he's going to get about 45, 50 minutes. Anything more, I'm absolutely stoked with. But what I really want to see from him is just playing good footy, and so Robbo can't sort of drop him when Spencer's back. So yeah, that kind of covers me for Roosters. How about you? What are your main talking points you want to touch on here?
Similar to you, mate. Like Rob Toy and Sandon Smith, absolute must, but we knew that coming into the season. Nafi White, I was always pretty keen on even before the injury. Even if he was named on the bench, I was pretty keen on him just because his PPM and he's a young prospect that has always looked good to me on the eye. The Supercoach show, he's in my side, and he hasn't really moved throughout the preseason. Connor Watson, as you touched on, the bench is concerning, but I don't mind it as a buy. Sort of what I said early in the year. I don't think he's going to be, sorry, in the preseason. I don't think he's going to set the house on fire and wasn't worthy of that 27% ownership. Just because he averaged, I think, 62 at hooker, and he's priced in at 60. I just don't think there's much value there. Now you've got Docker Clay, and I think that Salisi Fogarty is a utility as well in the 17 jumper. But I do think Watson, they need him to play big minutes. So I can't see him playing like 60 minutes, for example. I think he'll play like 65, 70 at a minimum, because I just need him out there as a quality player. That's pretty much me for the Roosters, though, mate.
Yeah, that's good stuff there. All right, so moving on now to the Broncos. Pretty sort of standard. We did see Shibasaki lock in that role, and I think his job security is good. So obviously Staggs is now out injured, but from all reports, we heard Shibasaki had that center sort of position locked in even before that injury. And so I
Yeah.
think he's just absolutely, you got to start with him at 234K at center wing. There's not that many sort of center wing cheapies we've got this year. So I think, especially in a Broncos side who we both predicted to go really well this year, I think you should definitely lock him in. Moving on, well, obviously we've seen, as rumored, Carrigan and Haas both props. Pakes has got the starting 9 jersey. Now I'm keen on Pakes. I'm going with the two, as we'll get into later. I'm going with the two cheapy hookers, and they're both actually playing this first game. Sandon Smith and Corey Pakes. Now I'm not sure who exactly I'm going to play yet, but they're both in my team. I think with this bench makeup for Corey Pakes, I think he's going to probably play 40 to 50 minutes. And with the Broncos' sort of good forward pack, I think there's going to be a bit of space in between the rucks. So I think he's going to have a few good darts out of dummy half. I'm hoping he scores about 40-ish. And I think I can easily see him crossing over, as we sort of saw in the trial. He got a double. So I think in the hooker position, if you're going with the double cheapie, he would definitely be the cheapie I'd be pairing Sandon Smith with over sort of a Mazulius hands. He's sort of the pick, especially at only 234K. He looks good. And then just the last one here, Gasevsky has won out the edge spot, but Pierre Cora is lurking in number jersey 17. So just for that, instant no go. I get his 234K. He's never been anything special. I think his average is about a 0.67 ppm. And I see him getting like 40 to 50 minutes. But for me, I honestly think this is Madge giving Pierre Cora a bit of a kick up the arse here. A bit of like, if you want to work, if you want to earn this jersey, you're going to have to earn it. You're not a lock in the team sort of thing. But I think as the season moves on, I can only see Pierre Cora's minutes getting more and Gasevsky's getting less. So look, I wouldn't talk you out of buying him, but I think just be wary, and I think they're just better options at that price. Last one, Kobe Hetherington. I think that bench makeup is a good bench for Kobe Hetherington. I think he's going to play 40 to 50 sort of minutes, and I think he'll get around 40, 50 sort of points. So if you want to lock that in at 330K, I'd be a lot more keen on buying Hetherington over Kasevsky. But yeah, apart from that, anything you want to touch on there, Xavier?
No, you've pretty much covered all the bases. I mean, important things to know is Shibasaki, I think, has got the job security as you touched on. Stags wears the number 3, Mariners in the number 3 this week. So that's another key thing to know. And it gives me more confidence that, when Stags comes in, he'll take over Mariners spot, not Shibasaki's spot. Regardless, Stags is out for a 6-week stint. So I think he's a great purchase at 232K. I'm really keen on this team this year. I've got a really high on Walsh, for example. So I think they're going to do bits this year. Pakes looks like a decent option with the lack of options at hooker at 232K starting. Billy Walters on the bench, was expected. Nothing really that we weren't expecting here. The one thing I will say though is Ben Takura in the reserves. I still think that you can pick him. If you have a look through the 232K or sorry, cheap front row forwards that have been named, there's literally like it's no one. It's no one, and I think Takura will get his chance throughout the season, especially with Carrigan and Haas. They're certainties for Origin. Like he will come into use, and he's got the upside and try scoring potential, unlike a lot of the other front rowers. So I still think he's a decent option, even though he's not named. He's actually in my side still at the moment. I'm really high on him, even though he's not named. There's just such a lack of cheapie at front row forward, and I think he's got the highest upside. So that's about all from me, mate.
Yeah, good stuff there. And yeah, as you mentioned with Decorah, he obviously hasn't made the starting 17, but I am sure, no doubt, he will be Supercoach relevant at some point this year. Whether you want to start with him, because yeah, there really aren't. There's a real lack of cheapies in the front row forward sort of position. We've got a real cheap Nuffy from the Dragons, and apart from that, it's Royce Hunt. So it's kind of pick your poison. If you don't back either of them in, you could just back Decore in and assume he gets the spot. Or, as we'll get into later, you can just nuff that spot out. I know Nuff's early doors aren't the best sort of play, but especially with the flex this year, I think it does come back into consideration. So yeah, that sort of covers the Roosters and the Broncos game. Quick prediction, Broncos by how many?
Broncos, honestly, I think they put 30 on them.
Yeah,
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that.
I agree with that. I think you could be very close. I see it being a 20, sort of 30 point. I think the Roosters will come out well, but the Broncos will just be way too strong.
Yeah, well, look at the difference in halves quality with Reynolds and Ben Hunt versus Townsend and Sandon Smith. It's just not even a comparison, and that's the main driving factor for that.
Exactly that, mate. Moving on to the first Friday game of the year, Friday footy. God, I love Friday footy. And I think it's an absolute cracker to kick off. Friday, 5 p.m., we got the West Tigers versus the Knights. So I'll touch on the Tigers first, sort of the big points, talking points here. Dewey's locked in that center spot, and he looks like he will be kicking round one. So for
Yep.
me, I was already massive on Dewey. I've locked him in. I think he's great ownership at 12, 14%. I think he's still a pod. It will be interesting to see with Appy next week who does get the kicking tee, but Appy isn't a great kicker. Appy doesn't want to kick. So I've got a bit of faith that Dewey's going to keep the kicking tee. And I just got to hope that he doesn't get injured because I think with his base, with this sort of team, I'm keen on Dewey. We got Skelton winning out the spot on the wing, and I think he's another great buy. I think at sub 500k, just under 500k, I just can't fit a way to get him into my team, but I love him. Like we've only seen a handful of games of him so far in his career, but he's got that massive base. He's an attacking stat. He's going to score that many tries for the Tigers this year. I honestly reckon he will be the leading try scorer for the Tigers this year. I see him in for a big season. I just
Fair call,
can't
mate.
quite get the funds to him, but yeah, I'm massive on Skelton there. Talon Silva obviously gets the starting hooker role while Appy is out, but it is interesting to see that the Tigers are running with a 3 forward bench with Hope sort of covering that utility role. So I think that bodes well for Royce Hunt. I think he is going to get decent minutes. And the other bloke it bodes well for is May. I think May is going to have an absolute cracker this week. I think he's going to score I'm going to go out. I reckon he's score 80 points at least. 80
Hmm.
points at least. I see him absolutely getting through his work, as we'll get into later. And as you might remember from last week, he was my pod C option, and I'm massive on him. I think, as I mentioned, with this bench makeup, with versing this night's team, I think he'll be keen to make a statement. And I am so high on Terrell May this year. So
Yeah.
yeah, I believe he'll be wearing the captaincy band for me round one. Apart from that, Safehearth is obviously locked in that edge spot and Jack Bird on the bench, so a bit of a no-go there now. But apart from that, they're the main talking points from the Tigers. Obviously, Buller is still out injured, so we've got Heath Mason not deputizing, but filling in this week at fullback. But yeah, any thoughts there from the Tigers? Anyone who interests you?
Yeah, definitely. Adam Douay, as we touched on, I was a bit more skeptical of his job, if he was going to get the centre role. But yeah, I was definitely always keen on him at the price. So I think he's a great option. He definitely will goal kick as well. Terrell May, awesome option, and Alex Seafarth was really high on him. I think he plays 80 minutes on the edge. So Royce Hunt, is a bit whatever, but he's a pick of a bad bunch. There's, as we touched on before, there's such a lack of front row forwards, cheap front row forwards, and he seems to be one of the better options there. But I don't think he's going to set the world on fire or anything. And Jack Bird, yeah, absolute no go. Um, Even if he was starting in the 13, there was concerns there for me. Him being on the bench is I couldn't do it. But that's about it, mate, for me. We'll move on to the Knights now.
Yeah, so for the Knights, it is a pretty sort of standard team. I don't think anyone is too surprised here. We got Crossland starting at hooker over Brayley. He's a bit of an interesting option at hooker. Look, like at 340k, I do prefer him to Mazulius, but I just can't get excited about the pick.
I don't mind it, to be honest.
Yeah, I
But
don't mind it.
I think he will definitely do a stint in the middle at 13 as well with Brayley coming on, which is a positive. It's just them having the buy, and we're already high on so many Knights players. Like, how many of them can you have? That's a bit of a caveat, but Yeah,
Exactly.
like, I don't mind it.
Yeah, and I feel like as we've kind of mentioned all preseason, we got Marzu, we've got Dylan Lucas, we've got Ponga, we've got Bess. Like that left edge is going to be humming. And I feel like the only other last point quickly to touch on there is Kai Pearce-Paul actually getting the starting edge role. So Frizzle has obviously been moved to lock, and I think that bodes well for KPP. I wouldn't be starting with him, but like I don't mind it as a pod play, but it's as you kind of mentioned here, how many nights can you load up on? But if you're missing a couple of these, like if you're missing Marzu and you're missing Lucas sort of thing, and you want a bit of pod upside, obviously I do prefer that left edge for the Knights. I think that's where their points and attack will be going down this year. But like I can't knock the pod play. Like, yeah. Any thoughts there?
Nah, pretty stock standard side on what we expected there, I think, mate. Nothing more to add. Pong is a great option, obviously, and we're both really high on him, same as Lucas and Marju. But nothing unexpected really from out of Knights camp.
Yeah, I would agree. Quickly, who's your tip?
In this one, I this is one of the games I'm really struggling with at the moment. I think I'm going to go the Knights. Knights. So unfortunately, it's just Heath Mason at the back, Talon De Silva. You got no RP. There's going to be so much of it going through Luai, but that halves pairing against looks on paper, Galvin and Luai looks a lot stronger than. As much as I do love Sharp as a player, looks a lot better than Sharp and Cogger for mine. But just the rest of the side and the rest of the construction, I take the Knights every day, especially in their back line.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good game. I think the overs will probably be hitting on this. I see plenty of tries for both the Tigers and the Knights, and I see the Tigers just getting home in a close one. So hopefully that we can start this year with a win.
Yeah.
Moving on now to the next game, we got the Bunnies and the Dolphins. Obviously, this game has been relocated to Combank Stadium because of the cyclone in Brisbane and Queensland
That's
and
a hit in
northern
the hour,
Sydney,
mate.
New South Wales. Yeah. Do you want to take away these? Who are your talking points? Who you're interested in from the Bunnies?
Okay, yeah. So from the Bunnies, main one I'm really interested in, and saw sort of stood out to me on team list was Isaiah Tass. He's currently in my side. He's been named on the wing. I don't expect much from the Bunnies this year, but Cody Walker and Jamie Humphreys being there, Campbell Graham, like those are all positive signs to me. I wasn't sure if Cody was going to play or Campbell Graham, so those inclusions are good, bodes well for Tass. I expect Tass to goal kick as well. The Dolphins aren't that strong. At 300k, I really like him as an option, and it doesn't seem like a lot of people are talking about him, to be honest. But he's in my side, and I don't see him moving. I'm going to play him this week, and hope the Dolphins are as poor as I sort of think they could be. Then again, the Rabbitohs without Latrell are not a very good side either. So we'll see how that one plays out. Um, Humphreys at 7, absolutely love. I think he's a lot better than Lewis Dodd. But in terms of unexpected people. Hubner was keen on him. I was keen on him regardless. Because obviously Wayne Bennett's brought him over from the Dolphins to the Rabbitohs. He sees a bit in him, and now he's starting 13. I think he's a great option. With that name, it shows a bit of faith. Just keep in mind that um, Ewan Aitken comes back in round 4 or 5, and Jai Arrow is apparently going to shift back to the middle. So it could be a bit of a short-lived thing, but for now, I think he's a good buy. Other than that, not too much else that's standing out to me. I'm a bit surprised that Totola's on the bench, to be honest, and I was surprised that Talis Duncan wasn't starting over Hubner. Those were sort of the main takeaways for me. Everything else is pretty expected, given that Campbell Graham and Cody Walker are healthy. Yeah, what are your takeaways from them, mate?
Yeah, so the kind of super coach interesting ones here is Campbell Graham, big stitch. Now, I am very keen on him. He is at pod ownership. He is at 3.5% right now at just over 500k. Now, I just don't know if I can go there with kind of this bunny's spine and with his injury history, but I think he's a massive watch for me. Like he just gets through his work. He's such a base stat beast. I am interested in it and I'm looking at him. Apart from that, I was as well surprised at Talis Duncan. I was pretty keen on him in the preseason. I still think he plays decent minutes, but without him starting now, I've lost kind of all faith. And as you mentioned, Bennett has brought Hubner down from the Finns to the Bunnies and given him the starting role straight away. I think that's a massive sort of sign of respect for this Hubner bloke. And he's obviously had a really good preseason and worked the house down, unlike Talis Duncan and sort of Totola. So yeah, I feel like that's the only talking points. Obviously, Jaden Sullivan is on the bench, so I can see Mazulius is not going to play 80. He will get a spell at some point. And
Billy's
that
there as well. So two
Yeah,
options.
I'm really not keen on Mazulius at all now. Like with that bench makeup, obviously Humphreys is going to be pushed. Well, we really don't know what's actually Wayne is going to do, but yeah, I think with that bench, I wouldn't be touching sort of thing there. But that pretty much covers the Bunnies. Moving on now to the Dolphins. We got a pretty sort of standard team. Obviously, Bostock is unavailable, so we got Tupu, one of the Tigers wingers, who I rate. I think he's a bit of a talent coming in.
Yeah.
He's 380k. He's not quite cheapy range, but he's not quite mid range either. I think he's just in that awkward sort of price. Look, I wouldn't be starting with him, but don't be surprised if we're all jumping on him in a couple of weeks. Like this guy is a bit of a talent. It's obviously Bostock's spot. Bostock got the debut kid of the year or whatever it's called. Like he had a really good season last year, so I think it is his spot. But yeah, just a bit of a cautious watch on Tupu if you're interested. Apart from that, we've kind of seen Finafuiaki get the starting spot, but the sort of immediate red bells and red alarms there is Lemuelu on the bench. So that automatically rules him out for me. We see Plath, as sort of predicted, gets that starting edge spot, and Tommy Gilbert, captain, and gets the starting lock spot, who we're both now pretty keen on.
Yeah.
With that bench, I think it does bode well for Tom Gilbert. I do see him getting sort of good minutes. But yeah, I've kind of gone cold on Finafuiaki before the team list, and this kind of solidifies it. So yeah, here's someone not in my team now. How about you? Who are your main talking points here?
As soon as Gilbert was named captain, well, even a little bit before that, I just had a bit of a feeling that he was going to be in for a bit of a year this year. And now that he's named captain, he's locked into my side. I think he's a great mid-ranger. I went Finifuaki up to Gilbert, because as you touched on Lemiolu on the bench, I don't think Finifuaki um, is going to play 80 minutes. Gilbert, as the captain, you would think plays big minutes. So I'm putting a lot of faith in that, and also him as just a player. I guess the last thing to touch on here for me is Marshall King. I was so keen on him in the preseason as a hooking option, but just he with Donahue on the bench, he played both trials for them. I and Marshall King sort of got a bit of a niggle at the moment that he's coming back from. So it's a bit of a precautionary thing, I think, having Donahue there, and it concerns me and it's sort of scared me off him. I really don't like a lot of the hooker options this year. So I've sort of gone away from Marshall King just because Donahue on the bench. I still think he'll be a decent option, but for that price, I want someone that's playing like guaranteed playing big minutes, and I don't have that faith anymore that Marshall King will off this niggle and also Donahue on the bench.
Yeah, I think you make good points there. Before we move on quickly, who's your tip?
Tip here is Dolphins.
Dolphins. How many?
I'm tipping them. Oh, I mean, I'm going to say by 10. I reckon two tries, but I also think this one's going to be a bit of a high scoring game. I look at the sides, and defensively they look a bit suspect to me. And you've got a bit of attacking spark there on both sides with Hammer, Nikorima, Cody Walker, Jai Gray, for example. So I think it will be a bit of points galore on Friday night with the Knights and Tigers game also. So
Yeah, it should be a good Friday night. Love that Friday footy is back. I am also going with the Dolphins, but I'm a bit like you. I don't think the Rabbitohs will be horrible. Like, I think they're going to do better than kind of everyone is expecting now. Obviously, everyone was all hyped up on the Bunnies, and then they've lost all these injuries, and now everyone's like, oh, bottom four sort of thing. I do see them probably not quite down in the bottom four. Not like I do think Warriors, for example, will be bottom four this year, but I think the Bunnies might be a slight surprise, and I would not be surprised at all if they won this. I think the Dolphins should win this, but yeah, I think especially with Wayne back, I think they're going to do better than most people sort of expect this year. So that covers that game. Moving on now, we've got Saturday night footy. We've got the Dragons and the Dogs. If you want to touch on any of your talking points from the Dragons team.
The Dragons team to me looks very stock standard. Exactly what we expected. Hamish Stewart, I guess, is someone that I haven't really heard of. That's been named. Other than that, Sione Finau not being named and Tuipulotu being there, but you can see that Finau's not even on the reserve, so I think he's still injured. Is that correct, or do you have any more info than me on that? The
He
fact he's
could
not.
be, from everything I heard, if he after that knock in the preseason, he should have like if he was his spot, he would have been named. So I think Flanagan has opted to go forward to Pilotu, but I think he's on a massive watch because yeah, Fino looked unreal in the trials. He scored obviously 4 tries. A bit of a shame that we don't have another sort of center wing cheapie this year in him, but yeah, I feel like that kind of covers that for the Dragons. Like not
That's it.
much going on here. Obviously, we've got Gula at lock, but I wouldn't be touching him. He is a bit of a cheaper option at 330k, but just with all these guys still to come in, like Davy Clemmer, and there's another middle forward still to come in for the Dragons. I just don't like either Gula or Stewart at that bottom price sort of price.
Yeah.
Moving on now to the doggies. Who interests you here? Because you're pretty big on the dogs in the preseason.
Yeah, yeah. Still am, mate. I still think they're going to go really well. Obviously, I hope that Carraz is back soon because he was someone I was really keen on before the injury. In terms of interest, I've actually currently flushed aside back and I've got none of them. Burton did have a bit of an injury. I still think he's a great option. And I also think Preston's a great option. Those are the two guys from the dogs that I would be keen on spending the money on. Um, Interesting things. Tupanoa, it's good to see him back to full fitness and named in the 17. So I guess that's going to be a bit of a watch with Preston if he plays 80 or Tupanoa, where does he sort of fill in? Because if Preston plays 80, he's going to be a great option. Even if he plays um, 65, 70, he's still a decent option. But that's a bit more of a watch for me now. Burden, as I said, um, very keen on. But other than that, it's pretty much what we expect from them to name.
Yeah, and just a quick one there with the Kraz injury. It's kind of come out now that this injury is like a hip injury, and he's going to be carrying it for the rest of his NRL career. So at this point, it's now sort of a pain management thing. So I think we should be seeing Kraz back sooner rather than later. But you just now have to have in the back of your mind this niggle, this hip injury sort of thing will be with him sort of for the rest of the time in his NRL career. So a bit sad for the man personally, but yeah, that kind of scares me off him a little bit just because he's now got this for the rest of his career. But it
Yeah.
will be an interesting watch. And then yeah, the only other guy who I would mention as well, Presto. You were massive on in the preseason. I like him as well. With this bench, especially as you mentioned with Stilly, he does now become a bit more of a watch because yeah, if he doesn't play 80, I wouldn't be keen on him at especially you're paying up at 600k. Like obviously it's all right for Hosking because he's 100k less, but yeah, if he's not playing 80, that kind of rules him out for me. But obviously I still all rumors are he's trained the preseason down. Like I still think probably will be playing 80. And but now it's yeah, more of a watch and see for me. So who's your tip here? Drags or dogs?
Look, man, I know it sounds a bit contradictory because I've been big on the dogs, but I honestly think the Dragons are gonna win this. I'm tipping the Dragons in this one. Um,
Yeah.
so I look at the sides and I'm like, okay, I don't know why, but having Carraz there, I really do rate Carraz, but I just um yeah, I'm big on the dogs, but at the same time, I think and I do think they're gonna have a like go to another level again this year and remain good. I just think they might take a bit longer to step into the season, and the Dragons generally start off quite quickly. Under Flanagan, they need to, and I think they're going to be pushing for the eight and pushing for a big start with their new recruits and Gutherson, Cook, and Holmes. So I'm tipping Dragons. What about you, mate?
I don't mind that at all. I think the Dragons, this is a bit of a statement game for them, especially if they can take it to one of the best sort of, as we saw last year, the Dogs are one of the best defensive teams in the NRL. Obviously, you got your Panthers and your Storm up there, but the Dogs were really not far off that. And
Yeah.
so I think I am leaning with the Dogs at this point in time, just because I feel like they do just have a bit of just a better team sort of thing. But like the individuals in the Dragons they do have a pretty good team as well, and
Yeah, they do.
I
Like
I
it's
think it
just
I think it was a great way to kick off Saturday footy. Obviously, there's not three games on this weekend, just the two on Saturday. But yeah, I think it'll be a cracker game.
that's it, mate. Like I think the Bulldogs have better systems defensively, but individually, like I like the look of the Dragons team more. It's just their halves that are a bit yuck to look at in Flanagan and Elias. But if you
Hmm.
take those guys out, you've got a lot of class in that side. You've got a
Good
lot of
side there.
yeah rep players. Definitely more than the Bulldogs have, more rep players than the Dogs have. It's just yeah, depends how the halves go for them.
Yeah, should be a good game either way. Moving on now to sort of the night of the round on Saturday night, the game of the round, I should say. We got the Seagulls versus the Cowboys at Four Pines. Now, this will be an absolute cracker, I reckon. If you want to take away who are your sort of main talking points from this Seagulls side, any surprises, anyone who's now come into calculations? What are your thoughts?
No real surprises for me, mate. At all. Like I think it's pretty well what we expected. Key sort of talking points. Oh, I guess the one surprise, sorry, is Jazz Tavanga being named at hooker. For me and the Manly side, I was not expecting that. I thought they would have gone with Simpkin and had Tavanga off the bench. I can see him being a bit of an option. I know that you're a big Jazz guy. I definitely prefer him in the middle, playing 13 because he can get his offloads out, which is what he likes doing. But he mauls work, He makes a lot of tackles. Other than that, it's pretty stock standard from both ends, and yeah, not too much else to comment. What do you
Yeah,
reckon?
so I would agree with that. Jazz has sort of come into calculations again, and I would be way more keen on going Tavanga over Finifuiaki, so to speak. But again, at the moment, he is not in my team. I just couldn't quite make it work. I think it's a bit of a wait and watch to see how many minutes he gets, as you mentioned, with Simpkin on the bench. But yeah, like if we see him getting 50, 60 minutes, I think he's going to be a great buy. He's a point per minute sort of bloke as well. If he gets those minutes, that's 60 points. That I think he's coming in about 360K in Supercoach, so massive value there. So yeah, I think the other sort of talking point, and I think it's great to see as well in footy, Takiaho is starting as well. So I think that's really good to see for the Seagulls, and also I'm a big Takiako fan. I'm not interested in him Supercoach wise just yet. But I just think it's important to note that yeah, he has got the other starting prop role there. But yeah, apart from that, no, not really too surprised with the Seagulls. Obviously, Hopper has got that wing spot while what's his face Talau is out injured. But yeah, I think it's a pretty good squad, right? Like the Seagulls look good on paper.
Yeah, definitely agree, mate. I think this is going to be a really high scoring game, actually, this one. Both these sides have really good attacking players. They just struggle a bit on the defensive end. So I'm really looking forward to this game. And I think what you said before is right. It could be the game of the round.
Yeah. Moving on now to the Cowboys. Good to see that Purdue has locked in as we kind of all suspected and everything, but that should just pretty much lock him into everyone's Supercoach teams. And he's even a point to play this week. Like he seems like a bit of a talent as we saw in the trial, and he comes into contention. We'll sort of probably touch on it later, but as that fourth reserve sort of spot, I don't mind it. Apart from that, Duffy is obviously locked in the seven role. He's beat out Clifford, who has been named in the reserves. Now, obviously, you'd want to wait till this game because just for whatever reason if they're just playing funny buggers and Clifford's going to come in last minute and Duffy drops out. I don't see it happening, but just do be wary and cautious of that. Apart from that, it's pretty standard in the forward pack. We got Bateman, who I don't mind is a bit of a pod at about 520K for the Cows. But yeah, Cohen Hess, I know I'll just quickly touch on him. There was a little bit of hype around him in the preseason, but named on the bench at 330K, never been a really super coach relevant. I would rule him out of your team if you had him there. How about you? What are your thoughts on this Cowboys team?
Yeah, really good to see Duffy named. I think he's a really good player. He looks really good. Looks the goods. He's signed until I think he's got signed till like 2030 or 2029 or something crazy like that. So um, look, nothing too much to touch on. I do wish that I'm a bit surprised. Well, not surprised, but I thought Braden Burns. Obviously he started in the last trial, but I just think they've got better quality wingers there in Valame, Jackson Paulo, younger guys that would be better. But obviously, the coach Todd doesn't agree. So nothing really else to touch on with this side. Duffy's a good option. Drinkwater looked phenomenal in the trials, good option. Bateman, don't mind him. Other than that, those are sort of Reece Robson as well. I guess he's someone that you can pay for what you expect to get points wise in a position that um, there really is such a dearth, lack of options there. So don't mind him either. Yeah, nothing really else to touch on with the Cowboys.
Yeah, as I reckon this will be a great game. So who are you tipping here? Who are you more leaning?
I'm on Manly, but I would not be shocked if the Cowboys come out and win this one. Especially a lot of people writing them off this year. I just don't. I think they're gonna really push for the 8 this season. But I'm on Manly at the minute. Just turbo DCE. It's too much for me. Those guys can just absolutely carry that side. What about you?
Yeah, I agree, and especially at Four Pines, I do think Seagulls get the job done, but I think this will be a cracking game. I do expect to see a fair bit of points. I wouldn't be surprised with like a 40-28 or a 30-20 sort of scoreline. There should be plenty of points, plenty of Supercoach points for hopefully Tommy Trbojevic, Garrick, your like sort of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a great game for Saturday night as well. So moving now on to the final game of the week. We got the Storm and the Eels, Sunday, 4:05. Do you want to touch on any of the Storm players that have either become a talking point, are you interested in, or a bit surprised at?
Yeah, man, I'm absolutely stoked to see Ryan Papenhuyzen named. I'll start that right off the bat. Bloody awesome to see him get named after a bit of doubt. I just hope that, he holds full health and he's not a lay out. But it's so good to see him play. He's one of my favourite players to watch, so it's awesome to see him named. Other than that, in the Storm side, pretty stock standard in what we expected. No real surprises. It's good to see Lazarus Varlepu on the bench. He's one of the cheapy front rowers, but with that forward pack, I just don't think he's going to get enough minutes to be an option. He's going to be more of an AE nightmare, I think. Other than that, it's good to see Hughes named as well, who was under a bit of an injury cloud. But I think the Storm, that team looks bloody strong to me. Um,
Yeah,
what do you think, mate?
mate, big time. This side just looks stacked, like forwards and backs, and even the bench. Like you got Wishy, McDonald, Tui Kamakamika, and as you mentioned, the new debut guy. I like they all look good. Like from a super coach perspective, the only ones that are kind of interesting me are Jackie Howarth, Cam Munster, Steffi, and even Sean Bloor. Like I think Sean Bloor should be in for a big season now with Cameron Munster coming back, now adapting proper fully to the Storm systems. I think he presents a bit more value than Katoa. I do think Katoa is a gun, and if you're paying up, he's a great option. But yeah, apart from that, I think like Storm pretty standard team. I see them doing very well this year. And so yeah, I reckon that pretty much covers that.
That's it, mate. Yeah, just super coach options. Agree with you. I think House is a great option. I don't mind. Oh, sorry. Howe's a great option and Munster's a great option. Those are two guys that I've had in and out of my side. I'm really keen on both of those guys. Harry Grant, I think, is a solid option as well. As I have kept saying throughout this podcast, Hooker really looks dire this year. So you could just lock in the best one from the start. Eli Katoa, I think, is a solid option as well. And Sean Bloor, with that bench, now that I look at it, he's going to play 80 minutes. No one is an edge player on that bench unless they shift someone to the middle and then move Liero to an edge, but I just can't see why they would do that. So, yeah, that's about all for me there, mate.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So if you Shawnee Bloor, a bit of a smoky. Moving on now to the Eels. We got a pretty standard-ish side. So obviously the main talking point here is definitely no Moses, with Volkman filling in at the 7. Now, I don't think that bodes well for Dylan Brown, as we've kind of seen with history. When there's no Moses in the squad, Dylan Brown has to run the ship, but him running the ship doesn't equate to Supercoach points for him. It kind of he has his hands on the ball a lot more, but it doesn't translate to Supercoach. So I think that's just I wouldn't like it wouldn't discourage me from starting with him, but it would be a point to note. I think there. Apart from that, it's good to see Aongi locked in at the fullback spot, and I feel like the only sort of thing to touch on now with the rest of this is sort of this bench makeup for the Eels. Now I think this bodes really well for Hopgood, and he's someone that's come into massive contention for me with this sort of bench. I think he's going to be, I think he's looking at 70 minutes at least with this bench. And he is an absolute gun, has a massive work rate. And just with this bench, like obviously Hands is now no longer an option with Smith on the bench. I see Dory on there. So I believe Dory's going to come on early doors and Jack Williams will push into the middle. So, but the only thing it would take me off is Talangi. Now with no Moses, we kind of were both keen on Talangi in early doors in the preseason, but with no Moses there, that kind of spoils that party. So I wouldn't be going Talangi now. But apart from that, I think that pretty covers it. How about you? What are your thoughts there for the Eels?
Yeah, well, I think Jake Tungo, I think is someone to touch on. Just because I don't want to. Yeah, I think he's not a buy at all. Addo-Carr, we've got to remember Addo-Carr comes back into this side. So do not get lured into the trap of going him at 280k as a centre wing option. Other guys to touch on, Jack Williams on an edge was a bit interesting. Be interesting to see how he goes, but he's more of a wait and watch. Kelma Tuilangi, exactly what you said. He's disappointed in the trial. He's very hot and cold as a player, and then without Moses, sort of rules him out for me as an option. Hopgood, can't fault anyone that goes him at all. He's yeah, you're right with that bench makeup. He's going to see some good minutes, and when he gets minutes, he's an absolute monster. So that's someone that I'm unfortunately fading at the moment, but I really do like the buy. I'm actually sort of tossing up this Riley Smith guy in the 14 jumper at the moment over Pakes. I've got Pakes at the moment, but Riley Smith frees up another 30k, and from all reports, he sounds like an absolute young gun. I just don't think Brendan Hands is going to hold that spot all season. I think Riley Smith is going to take over, similar to Owen Paddy at the Raiders. I think there's going to be a bit of a change of the guard at some point. Um, I do think the likelihood of Riley Smith doing that with Brendan Hands is higher than doing it to Tom Starling, because Tom Starling is a better player than Brendan Hands. And Riley Smith, by the looks all the goods. You know, he got upgraded to a top 30 contract. So he's someone to definitely keep an eye on, and someone that I'm actually lightly considering. Charlie Geimer is an option too, even though he's on the bench. He's someone that absolutely mauls work. So he's an option at 232k as well. But other than that, not too much else from me.
Yeah, I would say I do prefer Geimer over Goz, but I don't see Geimer getting sort of those 40 minutes. I see him getting about 30 and scoring about 30, but I think his role in this team will increase over the season. Whereas Kasevsky's, I see Piakora getting to that spot back. So if you were to pick one of the two, who would you go, Geimer or Goz?
At the moment, I've got Kashevsky. I think with these cheapies, try to take I try to take the role over the player. Like Charlie Geimer's a better super coach option, no doubt, but he doesn't have the starting role. Kashevsky does. I with these cheap guys, I that's what I lean towards. I lean towards a guy that's starting in the starting role. So that's where my head's at the moment. I do agree with your points though, and I think Charlie Geimer is definitely a better super coach option. I'm just more confident that Kashevsky's going to be out on the park more, which I'm almost certain he will be, at least to start the year. When you're on the park more, you have more opportunity to do things, and also on a better side, not playing against the Storm, he's playing against the Roosters. So and he's got halves of Ben Hunt and Reynolds. So I would take Gashevsky, but I definitely prefer Geimer as an option if he had the role. He just doesn't have the role.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting to see how that one develops. And obviously, we've both got Valmunga. So if one of these sort of do excel, we can easily jump onto him, right? Like it's pretty much a straight swap. They're all based at this like 234k. So I think, yeah, as you mentioned here, it's a bit of a watch and see. If they end up killing it first two rounds, easy enough to trade them in round three before they rise in price. So just quickly before we move on into our team analysis and updated teams, I'll get your thoughts here. Storm by how many?
Yeah, definitely the Storm, mate. I think Storm by. I'm gonna go 14.
14, bit closer. I reckon Storm by 24. I see this being like a 34-10 sort of scoreline. I think the Storm will run away with it. The Eels will be pretty persistent and a bit grubby early on, But yeah, I just see the Storm with that side. Like, it's just class all over the pitch.
Yeah.
So I just don't see them losing. And I suspect we'll be saying that a lot throughout this year.
Yeah.
But no, that covers up the second part of round one team lists. So now moving back over, we've got the leagues. We'll go through sort of our updated team lists just briefly, quickly. So we'll touch through mine. We'll go position again. I'm still starting with the Pakes and Sandon Smith combo. That hasn't changed too much. The only question for me now is kind of who I'm deciding to play. Am I playing Smith, who I don't know. I just am not keen on Smith against the Broncos. I think the Broncos are going to towel him up. I think he's going to have a pretty average game. I'm a bit more keen on playing Pakes at the moment, so that's the way I've started. Moving over to your side, it's very similar. You've got Smith and Pakes, but you're starting Smith. But as you kind of mentioned just before, you're very much eyeing up that Eels little hooker. So any
Yeah.
thoughts here?
Yeah, mate, this isn't locked in. Sandon's definitely locked in for me, and will be playing him. Even though I do think the Broncos will tear them up. It's just I know that Sandon's goal kicking and playing 80 minutes, and I just need him to do one thing throughout that game, and he's on 40 points. So I would much rather take that than the gamble on someone like Pakes, who's probably a safe 30. I would rather take someone like Sandon Smith who can get 60 odd if he gets a couple of contributions or things go their way. But he could also then again get like 15 or something. Um, the Pake spot's not locked in for me, but I'm leading that way. I was big on not going cheapy hooker, but the way that Supercoach has just unfolded this year, I hate all the hooker options at the moment. Basically, Harry Grant, who I would spend up on, has a buy in round 2 and then comes into Panthers round 3, so he's not worth that money for me. Jeremy Marshall King didn't play a trial. He's got Donahue on the bench. And then what Connor Watson, the Roosters look poor, and he's got Zach Docker-Clay on the bench and that Fogarty bloke as well. So concerns all over for those options that were higher priced. So I think it's just sort of forced my hand to go back to the cheapy route, which is I think where I'm going to end up.
Yeah, good stuff there. Moving on now to the front row forwards. We've both got the same sort of front row forwards. We've
Yep.
we've got Terrell May, we've got the horse, you've got Nafu White, and then you've got Benticora. So has this changed much? Who's moved here?
No, exact same. I have not changed anything in that front row really since our last, no, at all. That was my front row in our last team reveal. The only thing that I could change is Takura, just tossing up um, what I could do with the extra funds if I went down to that Dragons bloke, or I'm 2K short of going Royce Hunt, so can't go there either. So still playing around with that position and less so with the Pakes position. But yeah, that's me at the moment.
Yeah, that looks good. Obviously, we go over to mine, and this is sort of part one of the big reveals. We got big Terrell May with the C. As I said earlier, I am massive on him, and I think he's going to have an absolute cracker season and round one. I think he's going to come out, show his intent, kind of a bit of an up you to the Roosters attitude. And I expect the Tigers just to be in this game. And with the bench makeup of the Tigers this week, I see him easily playing 60, 70 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if he played the whole 80. Like, this guy is an absolute workhorse. He's fit as, he looks good on the eye. He's just an absolute gun, must have. But yes, I've gone for the bold call of captaining him this week. I've also got Nafu White on the bench as well. And this is the last spot in the team. So obviously I've got just under 14K in the bench. I can't quite afford Royce Hunt at this point. So I've decided at this point, rather than going for that Dragons cheapie, to go with a bit of a nuff cheapie in the front row forward. As we sort of mentioned, you can run enough this year, especially with it no longer being that big of an issue, especially with the flex. Like, there's more to play, and we end up nuffing this position sort of anyway. So this is something I'm definitely not locked into. If I can somehow afford and get up to Royce Hunt or even a Takora, I would be a lot more. I would like to do that. It's just with the funds at the moment, I can't quite get there. But yes, I think after a bit more fiddling around, I'm sure that might change. But yeah, very similar front row forwards. Moving on to our second row forwards here. So I've got obviously been big on Dylan Lucas all preseason. We'll get to it later, but I can't fit Dylan Lucas in my centers anymore. So I've had to move him up to center row to second row, but I still think he's a great option. Now the other option I am considering big time is Hopgood over Dylan Lucas, but I actually really am keen on Hopgood. I think it might change again before the season kicks off, but I think that Friday night game, like I'll be keen as to watch that Knights Tigers game. I kind of got half my side playing in it, so it'll be a
Yeah.
good watch. So yeah, Lucas is pretty locked in for now. Obviously, as a safe hearth, we've been massive on him in the preseason. He hasn't moved once. Sort of the change that has come here has been Tallis Duncan out, so I've been required to rejig, and that rejigging has made me go up to Tom Gilbert. As we've touched on in the potty so far, with that bench makeup for the Dolphins, with him being captain now, I see him getting big minutes. He's a workhorse. We saw in the first half of the trial match, he just tackled the house down, and I think he will be good for sort of 50, 60 points. I think he will be a good pick this year in that sort of midi price range. So I think he is good value at just over 460k. I'm still locked in. I've still got Tino. Now, as I was saying a bit before the potty started to Xavier, I actually had David Fifita in this team last night. I think at 2% ownership, that is massive unders. It just hurts so much having the buy around one and then having both Tino and Fifi out. But I had a side with just David Fifita and no Tino, and I really liked it. So I'm massive on Fifi, especially with that 2% massive pot ownership. It's just I can't quite get there at this point in time. Obviously, Vamunga's already played. We've locked him in. And then Hubner, I think he's the sort of cheapy pick to go for this week at second row. I have him ahead of both Geimer and Gasevsky. I think he's sort of the standout pick in the sort of second row forwards there.
Yeah, like it, mate. Like all those options. You absolutely grilled me for having Dylan Lucas in my second row in our last team reveal. So it's good to see that you've come around because doesn't matter where you play. Like obviously we'll prefer him in the center wing, but at the end of the day, he's someone scoring in your 17. He's going to score good points either way. So can't fault that at all. Like the other picks as well. Mine's
Yeah,
very similar.
yeah, and I'll just quickly touch on. I do agree. I would much prefer Lucas in the center wing, but as we'll get to shortly, both my 5'8s have played in Weeks and Metcalf, and I think one of them will be going very shortly. So, sort of the initial plan will be trade one of these blokes out, get Dewey up into 5'8, and then bring Lucas down, and then I can bring in a second row forward who's kind of standing out. But that's just sort of that. This is why I love the duels as well. You just have so much more versatility with them. So, anyhow, we won't get too far ahead. We'll go over to your second row forwards now. So if you want to take your second row forwards away, obviously Zachy Hosking's already played. You've locked that in, as is Valmunga, but the other spots.
Yep. So the three bench second row forwards haven't changed, mate. The ones, the cheapy ones. So I've still gone ahead with that. I was confident in their roles, and that's what I'm going to go with to start the season. Pretty confident that's the way I lean. Was a change. I had Lucas up here with Preston. So I've obviously opted for, and I had Finifuaki. So what I did was with the news of Finifuaki and Lemielu, I just wasn't confident anymore. So Lemielu and Finifuaki and Preston turned into Hosking and Gilbert. For me, they were the better option. They were the better pairing. Just the role I was a lot more comfortable with, and knowing that Gilbert was named captain and Hosking was back healthy and starting. So that's the way I went there. As far as Seafarth goes, I was always keen on him as a mid-ranger playing 80. Um, I can't really see myself changing much here. The one person that I could see myself changing is Seyfarth, potentially, because I've obviously got, we'll touch on it later, but I've got Lucas down in the centre wing. Someone that I'm actually really keen on is Jack Howarth, and he's the same price as Seyfarth. So I'm sort of weighing up if I flick Dylan Lucas up and go a Howarth, or even if I can find the funds and go a Skelton. I kind of think I prefer that upside over a Seyfarth, even though I think Seyfarth plays 80 and will get a safe 50. I think Howarth and Skelton excite me a bit more. So I'm tempted, like I'll have a bit of a play around, but the rest of the second row is pretty well locked in.
Yeah, you made a good point there. Obviously, having that Lucas Jewell in center wing does open up a lot more options. And like, I think Safeheart is value at 435k, but someone who I would be, especially in your position, if I could somehow get up to Skelton, I would definitely lock that in. Like,
Yeah.
it just as you mentioned, like more upside. Like I see Steve Hart doing consistent. He's gonna make money. He's gonna be good value, but I don't see him going to the heights that I believe Skelton will go to this year. So yeah, I think that's a good point. I like Gilbert and Safeheart. Obviously, we both got them in, both as our mid-range sort of second row forwards. The only thing still is just with that bench. But what can you do? At least they're starting, unlike Van Langer. I like Hubner. Like I would like two of them. I think three is a bit much, but as we'll get into later, you're a bit strapped for cash because, well, you
Yeah,
guys will
there's a
see
reason for it,
shortly. But
mate.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm massive on that play, so I understand it. I don't mind it too much. We'll quickly touch on halfbacks. Both of us, we've got the same halfbacks. They're both played already, Hines
Yeah.
and Cleary. We're both pretty locked into this. I don't see Cleary leaving my side at all this year unless he gets injured. Hines, on the other hand, is a big watch with the kicking tee and how sort of the Sharks progress and develop. But for now, I'm happy as with that. Any thoughts on your halves? You happy?
I'm happy with both of them. Obviously, want Hines to take the kicking tee, but I didn't get him in for that Panthers game. Obviously, I got him in for his good draw and what we think that the Sharks can do coming up. I also just, if I went down to a Duffy, for example, getting that cash up back up to a Hines when I think the Sharks are going to be humming this year is going to be very difficult. So I'd much rather start and then pivot from there with the higher price guys. There's also an option for us after Harry Grant has his bye. If we don't like the look of Hines in round two, we can actually flick him up, use Sandon, get him down at halfback, and go to Harry Grant. So I really like that's an out as well. So we've got the thing with having these high price guys is you got pivots to go down to if you like the look of other people before the price rises take charge.
Yeah, I think you made a good point there. And as I said, with the Jewels being so valuable, I think that's a great sort of little play. If you're not impressed with Hines and you're not impressed with Duffy either, if you just want to lock in a gun, bring Sandon down and lock in sort of Harry Grant after that buy. I quite like that play actually.
Mm.
Moving now on to 5'8", you've got Metcalf, as do I. So we've touched on a lot already this podcast. He might not be there for you next week. He will be there for me next week, just not starting.
Yeah.
That's sort of the other bloke here on your bench here, Dewey. He's made it into your team.
Yeah, mate. So I guess the changes from the last team reveal is I had Duffy where Hines is, and I had Munster where Dewey is. So I guess the trade-off for me was, am I more afraid of Munster or Hines? I asked myself that question, and I said, I'm much more scared to go up against Hines with the draw he's got and the role he plays. So Munster, you just got to get through one round. I still think he's a terrific option, but I would rather pay the 135k. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get him in. And then Duffy as well, obviously frees up a lot of cash. But I'm very confident in the way that this is structured that I can move to those players if need be. Very keen on Dewey. I just wanted to see him start, and it's very hard to resist that price tag as a starting centre with a good draw and the goal kicking. So quite happy there, and I don't see that changing at all really. I could see myself flicking Dewey down and getting Munster in at 5'8". But I'm pretty content with the way my side's looking at the moment.
Yeah, look, mate, I think it's a great buy. I do. I'm a big fan of the Dewey buy, and yeah, he gives you that jewel as well. So for whatever reason, if one of the other 5'8s who are killing it, and this is sort of a play that's been talked about a little bit, is it's Metcalf down to CHT, like because I think he's at 330k for the
Yeah, that's
Warriors,
it.
and that you free up 100k then. But for you, like obviously we're not trading yet, but I think this sets up your team well, and I quite like this Metcalf and Dewey sort of pairing. Moving over to mine now at 5'8". Obviously, they've both played, so and we've touched on them a bit, but I've got Weeks and Metcalf. Obviously, Metcalf will be sitting there without the reserve next week. I won't be playing him, but Weeks I definitely will be. I think he passed the eye test for me. Weeks he was involved. He just wasn't as involved as I'd like. I knew he didn't have the base, but I've seen his pace, I've seen his attacking flair. The chances will come, especially with the amount of offloads the Raiders pushed. So I'm happy enough having him for now. He will be staying in my side next week. So again, I don't see this changing too much either. Moving on now to center wings, which is a position that has changed a little bit. For me, I have obviously moved Lucas up to second row to accommodate Garrick. That's pretty much been my only change in center wing. Like I've ended up caving. I just think with Siegel's draw to begin with the kicking tee, I like the draw, and I'd rather have Garrick and Turbo sort of that Seagulls just combo because they score the most points. He is still someone I'm not opposed to anti-potting. Like I could obviously flick Lucas down and then get Hopgood up in second row. But yeah, like for now, I've locked in Garrick. Obviously, RTS touched on happy as with him. Marzu, we've been keen on all season. And Dewey, I obviously can't fit him in at 5'8" now. So I've got him in at center to be able to trade out one of those 5'8s and then bring him up to center. And then, yeah, we've got all the kind of must-have cheapies on the bench there in Purdue, Shibasaki, and Toya.
Yep. Like it,
Moving,
mate.
moving now onto yours.
Yeah, mine is pretty well the exact same as the last team reveal. The only changes, so I'm always had Garrick, Lucas, and Marju, huge on those three. The changes were I took Tamale out to my detriment for Shibasaki, just because I thought better side, more job security, and had to take Finn out, who I was really keen on, and I went up to Isaiah Tass on the wing goal kicking. Other than that, um, I'm not locked into TAS at the moment. But my sort of thinking here is with Metcalf, I'm not too confident in. TAS down to Tamale is 100K. I can go make that trade and then go Metcalf to Brimson, which is something that I quite like with the spare cash if TAS flops. But I think on the wing and goal kicking, I'm willing to take that chance against the Dolphins this week and see how he goes and sort of move from there.
Yeah, like it, mate. Like it, especially. I love that Brimo play. I was obviously massive on Brimo
Hmm.
in the preseason. He was in my side up until about 10 minutes before the game kicked off. And then I wanted weeks. I wanted more involvement in that first game. I kind of fell victim to a bit of first game syndrome, but you live and you learn. I'm not happy with it for now. As I said, I'll give KO Weeks another week. So that covers your centers. Moving on, my fullbacks haven't changed. Obviously, we've got Ponga, Turbo, and Iongi on the bench, but your fullbacks is a bit more interesting, a bit more fun, a bit more gunning.
That's it,
You've
mate.
you've you've got three guns there, mate.
Yeah, for my last team reveal, still the same three. I just can't like I have tinkered around having Yongi, but I just like the look of these three way too much, and I want to see how Yongi goes. There's no Moses playing. The Eels, I think, as you touched on, you think they're going to get rolled against the Storm. How many points is he going to get? How much cash is he going to make? I would much rather take the gun and then pivot where I need to. So I'm pretty set on these three. I really like the look of it. I can't fault it. I've got these three, Cleary and Hines. I'll move to Duffy or Yongi if I want, but my plan was to stack the high scoring positions, which I've done. I've got quite a nice centre wing, stacked fullbacks and stacked halves. So those are the high upside players, and that's my strategy this year. And then I've got no one really on the buy, so trying to attack those points hard first, and then sort of make play. And I can upgrade the cheapies that perhaps don't go so well, like as you touched on, the Gashevsky in my cheapie second row, Valmunga, Pakes. I've got that flexibility there. So that's sort of my plan am I happy to burn trades early? Well, the answer to that is yes. Yes, I am. So I'm going to go hard for points and then trade down and then upgrade before price rises where needed. And that's pretty much me. Captaincy, I've had it on turbo pretty much the whole time, but I'm so tempted come tomorrow night to captain Walsh. I'm so big on him. So big on him, but I don't think I'll do it. I think I'll keep the VC on him. But my side's pretty locked in, and I'm pretty happy with those fullbacks. I can't go past those three to be honest. So
Yeah, mate. It looks so nice on the eyes, just those three gun fullbacks in Turbo, Ponga, and Walshy. And yeah, like we've both sort of touched on it earlier in the potty, we think the Broncos are going to roll the Roosters. And I think that would be a massive pod play. Obviously, you've got the VC on him, so if you were to loop, you're going to get Metcalf's 12, which kind of kills the whole point of looping, which is kind of why I've gone towards a Terrell May, just lock it in. But yeah, look, I think if you're keen on it and your gut is saying it, I love the Captain Walsh sort of play early doors because I think out of all the matches this week, I believe the Broncos will beat they'll put on the most points out of the Knights and the Seagulls. I see them all being high scoring points, but I see the Broncos really putting it to the Roosters.
That's it, mate. And if he's got the goal kicking as well in that, geez, watch out. Like I can't fault any of these three guys. I'm so big on all of them, and I just couldn't pass any of them up. Obviously you've gone the Yongi route. Are you locked into that?
Yeah, I'm pretty locked into this. I feel like the only point of contention in my team really now is the second row and centers. I'm pretty locked in everywhere else. Obviously, I'd like to get Roberts up to Hunt, but apart from that, I'm pretty locked in on Safehearth, Gilbert, love Lucas. Garrick is the only one who I'm like umming and ahhing. I'd really love to go Hopgood. And actually, do we do a live trade? I can see if I can afford it. If I can get Lucas down to center wing, we bring him down.
Go Hopgood and then Royce Hunt.
Yeah. Do you reckon I can afford it? It's going to be
It's going to
close.
be close, I think.
So we got Hopgood. Where is he? 657. We got Dylan Lucas at 616. How much have I got? Oh, I'm still
Nah,
going to be
you're short.
short.
Yeah.
So I'll still have to play around with that. But yeah, the side, the crux of the side is mostly locked in. It's just, yeah, sort of locking in these sort of final few players.
Yeah,
But
same
apart
with
from
me,
that,
mate.
I think that wraps up another good episode, Xavier. I'll quickly go back and shout out our league again. So, like as we mentioned last week, I think there was 30 people in the league. We've doubled it and we've got 70. Like we're just absolutely so stoked with that sort of engagement for our first season, for our first sort of month, even doing this podcast, the Hooked On NRL SuperCoach podcast. So I think it's great to see the engagement. Don't forget, you guys can still join. Round 10 is when it all locks out. The code is 849156. And actually, I'll just quickly mention as well, I forgot earlier that I won some Supercoach merch. So
Yeah,
so
awesome,
next
mate.
episode or whenever Sangster sends up the Supercoach stuff, I'll be repping it in the next potty. So I've got a couple balls, one signed from Tommy Sangster and one signed from Corey Parker. So it's good to see. It's good to see that the Supercoach community is giving back, and yeah, it'll be awesome to see on the potty. So look,
That's
you've
it,
got
mate.
something to look forward, guys. Look forward to. You've got a Tommy Sangster signature, and you got Corey Parker, which is a bit more classier with the ball there. But yeah, any other final regards or final comments, Dave?
No, nothing. Thank you for everyone that's tuned in and watched this whole episode. We really appreciate it. And yeah, can't wait, mate. That's awesome that you won the merch. It's um yeah, really cool to see, and I can't wait to see it on hopefully our next episode when it arrives.
Yeah, mate, it should be good. So yeah, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, guys. We appreciate all the feedback. Let us know any conundrums you're doing with. And I think maybe moving forward, we might spend a couple minutes if we get any questions, just going through sort of the questions from you guys, because me and Xavier would be more than happy to help you guys out, talk you through our sort of opinions on the topic. So yeah, don't forget to comment on anyone you're a bit unsure on, who you're leaning this way, that way, and just yeah, let us know your general thoughts. But apart from that, thanks for another episode, Xavier. It's been a pleasure, mate.
Awesome. Thank you, mate. Yeah, awesome episode, and came for the next one.
Sounds good. See you guys.
See ya.